Good afternoon, collectors and friends. Thank you so much for tuning in to Trading Card Therapy, episode number 76. I'm your host, the Doctor, Leighton Sheldon. Last week was a big episode for us. It was number 75. And as I was telling you, our community, I let everyone know that we were happy to provide a couple prizes as long as you participated in the chat. That would serve as your entry. We were going to give away a $75 credit to the Just Collect eBay store. You can find us on eBay at just_collect. We have about 1,000 graded cards there, mainly vintage. And then a second winner would win a $75 break credit to vintagebreaks.com. You could find us streaming on there 7 days a week on YouTube at youtube.com/vintagebreaks. And what's really cool about Vintage Breaks is we have lots of vintage packs and boxes, but we also are the world leader in set breaks. All of that can be found on our website at vintagebreaks.com. So without further ado, the first winner is 845 Sports Cards. You won a $75 credit to the Just Collect eBay store. John, our vice president, is going to reach out to you on YouTube so that you can contact us directly and figure out how to cash in your prize and use it to add a card to your collection. And then our other winner is Alex-HQ5ML. You have won a $75 break credit to vintagebreaks.com. So what that means is you're going to get up to $75 of free breaks from Vintage Breaks, BREKS.com. And once again, John from our office will drop you a line on YouTube and give you all the instructions you'll need so you can claim your prize. After looking at all of the comments, and there was probably, I guess about 20 or so, I realized that it wasn't just folks saying hi. It was folks saying hi and letting us know what they were collecting. In some cases, it was Roger Maris. In other cases, it was pre-war. And it kind of ran the gamut. You know, some folks were working on, I think, graded Hall of Fame rookies. I wanted to let everyone know that I really appreciate you tuning in and, of course, commenting to get an entry. I know you didn't win the big prize, you know, the two prizes, the $75 credit to the Just Collect store or the $75 break credit to vintagebreaks.com. But that doesn't mean that we don't appreciate you. We appreciate you very much. In fact, for all of the folks who have made a comment on last week's 75th episode of Trading Card Therapy, we are going to give each and every one of you who commented, who didn't win one of the two big prizes, we're going to give you a gift, courtesy of us here from Just Collect and Vintage Breaks. And even though you didn't win one of the two bigger prizes, we're going to give each and every one of you a $50 break credit to vintagebreaks.com. That way you could check out our company. You could learn about the vintage breaking community, how it works, how do we differ a little bit, you know, from some of the big modern breakers out there, and what exactly is a set break and kind of everything in between. So if you're interested, you can look on YouTube at your comment. You'll be given instructions how to claim your prize. And if you just want to check us out, you go to the website vintagebreaks.com, or if you want to tune in today, we'll be going live later on till about midnight at youtube.com/vintagebreaks. Thank you so much for each and every one of you for watching and participating. It means a lot to me. So the first thing I wanted to cover, we're going to cover a couple things, but before we get into it, I wanted to let everyone know something special that we're doing starting with today's episode. So on today's episode, we are having a very, very good friend of mine join us for the show in just a little bit. And I'm hoping for about the next 25 episodes or so, from here to 100, we're going to try to have a guest every week. Some of those people will be collectors. Some of those folks will be dealers. Other folks might be auction house owners or just folks that work in an auction house, and kind of everything and anything in between. If you're interested and you would like to potentially appear on a future episode of Trading Card Therapy, would love to chat with you, drop me a line. My email is Leighton, Leighton, @justcollect.com. But I'm really looking forward to the next 4 months or so. I used to do a fair amount of guests on my other podcast, Leighton's Loft, but I only do that about once a month now with my good buddy Lou. And it's really to kind of serve the Vintage Breaks community in particular, whereas Trading Card Therapy is really about anything and everything going on with, of course, the world of cards. So super excited about that, and to have Larry join us as our first guest in just a little bit. I wanted to go over with you something really cool that we did at the National this summer. We opened up a pack. It's actually a rack pack of 1967 Topps second series baseball. And the reason why the second series in 1967 is so important is because it's known as the Mickey Mantle series. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean that you can only get Mickey Mantle in the second series and no one else, but it means that in terms of what's possible. So the way that Topps produced cards back then were in series. So in other words, series 1 might have, 88 cards in it, 77 cards, 66 cards, 132. It depends on, which year and of course which sport. But in particular, the second series of 1967 Topps, the Mickey Mantle card was number 150. So that could be found in the run of cards that were produced as part of the second series of 1967 Topps baseball cards. So when we had the opportunity to potentially offer that as a break, we of course jumped on it here at Vintage Breaks and was very excited about that. It did take a while to sell out, as I think it was give or take about a $495 price point per card, which of course puts the total amount of revenue taken in from that break at about $18,000. And I wouldn't be surprised if a 1967 Topps rack pack sold today, it's going to sell for a solid $10,000 or $15,000 in the second series, because they've really dried up. And of course, in some cases, we're actually opening them up, which means there's just one less the next day after we opened it. So we opened up that particular rack pack at the National Sports Collectors Convention this past summer in Cleveland. And the break had 36 slots, so 36 cards. It sold out before we opened the rack. And we've had a lot of interesting collectors along the way participate in our breaks. Some famous, some not so famous. And in particular, I was very pleased that the president of PSA, Nat Turner, participated in our 1967 Topps rack pack break. So I thought after we opened the pack that I was going to meet up with Nat at the National and I was going to give him the card that he pulled. But after cleaning up some stuff from the National, I found this in the office the other day. So this is the Mets Maulers card featuring, you can see that it belongs to Nat. And this features Ed Kranepool and Ron Swoboda. And it's really sharp, left to right, very well centered, top to bottom, just a little bit off. Probably not going to grade much higher than an 8 just because of that centering. And I don't think it's particularly valuable, but I thought that Nat would like the card. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about someone who's worth, well, I don't know, but a heck of a lot of money. And this card is not worth a heck of a lot of money. So when I texted Nat, where should I send this card? I thought he might just say, hey, Leigh, keep it, give it away, whatever the case is. And I love the fact that Nat Turner is a collector just like you and I. He wants the card sent to his home address to add it to his collection, because even though Nat is very well off, he's not opening up 1967 Topps second series rack packs every single day. So with that, I thought that was a really cool, not only pull, because it's a really nice card, but it's a fun story to share from someone who clearly can afford to buy probably a PSA 10 of this card, but wants his version that actually came out of the rack pack. So I could see Larry is in the green room. And Larry, we're going to be with you in just a minute. I wanted to let everyone know that on last week's episode of Trading Card Therapy, I had talked about a recent road trip and vacation that I took with my son Crosby. We went up to Boston, or the Boston area, as well as Maine, and had the good fortune to meet with someone in the Boston area who had a collection, lots of T206s. If you want to check out the full story, you can do it at our blog at blog.justcollect.com, or last week's episode of Trading Card Therapy. Today, we are dropping the video on that experience that I shared with my son on our YouTube channel, Just Collect, all one word. Check it out if you get a chance. I wanted to take a moment before we bring Larry on to share with you what I believe the hobby is teaching, I'm hoping, my son, and of course, some of the things I believe I've learned along the way. But I'd love to hear from you in the chat. What do you think the hobby has either taught you in the past or is currently teaching you now? Some of the things I came up with are how to budget and manage your money, organization skills, how to make friends, communication skills, research, understanding economic factors, and a whole long list of other things. But keep in mind, my son is 9, so I'm not sure how many of those he's getting right now. But I can tell you this, after purchasing the collection from Kevin, I didn't have to tell my son to shake his hand. My son knows when he meets someone how to shake hands and to introduce himself. And I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of the other things that he may learn along the way from the hobby. So with that, we're going to now bring on our first ever guest in trading card therapy history, Larry Solomon. So Larry, are you working today?
Of course.
Figured.
What do you think? You think I'm sitting on the beach here? I'm working. I'm working hard, just like you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So Larry, yeah, we're good, John. Thank you. I really appreciate you joining the podcast today, Trading Card Therapy. And I don't know if you heard when you were in the green room for a minute, one of the things that I'm going to be doing over the next, call it 25 shows or so, about 4 months, is I'm going to be bringing guests on. And keep in mind, that's a very popular thing to do in our industry. So if you watch on YouTube at all and you consume any sort of content in our space, a lot of people like to bring guests on. And I think it's a wonderful idea. Part of what I was trying to accomplish with Trading Card Therapy in the beginning of it was to really dispense as much information as I could about the hobby, and of course share some of my stories along the way of, going out and seeing collections and treasure hunting and all that fun stuff. And as I had some time to reflect on the 75th episode, not only did it make me feel a little bit older, but it also gave me some time to check in and think about what I was trying to accomplish with the show. And so one of the things I really do enjoy doing is talking to people that I'm friends with who also are involved in a space that I love, meaning the hobby, and trying to not only learn something for myself, but also maybe share some words of wisdom with others. And when I was considering, Larry, who to bring on first, keep in mind, I know a lot of folks in the hobby, you know that. And we're going to have some really good guests over the next 25 weeks. But in terms of hobby friends, you're one of my oldest. And not only are you one of my oldest hobby friends, but I like to say real life friends as well. And really almost like a second dad to me, a consigliere, if you will. If I have a question about life, about my son, about an unopened item, of course, we're going to cover in a few minutes. I love chatting with you, Larry. So thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, and I'm delighted to be here as I didn't even realize I was your first.
You are. I used to do guests with my other podcast, Leighton's Loft. Right. But that is really I do it once a month now, but I've been doing Trading Card Therapy once a week now for, over a year. And I really thought there'd be a lot of value to bring you on, partly because you have a niche knowledge that a lot of folks not only really love that market, meaning the unopened market, but I'm not so sure that many folks even know who you are. And so I thought that in terms of a good guest, I thought you would be a perfect person to start with, because we've known each other for, I can't believe it, Larry, I was thinking about it, probably over 25 years. Give or take.
No, I think that's exactly right. And like I said, I'm honored, I'm privileged, I'm delighted to be here. And just for clarification, when Leighton said I'm one of his oldest friends, he meant he's known me for a long time. He didn't necessarily mean chronological age. I just want to clear that up, because
that's very funny, Larry. I guess I'll probably owe you a drink for that at dinner. It didn't come out necessarily the way it should have. But anyway, let's kind of get right down to it, because I know you are a working man. Larry, with whatever you're comfortable with, why don't you give everyone just a little bit of a background in terms of who you are and what you do for a living kind of thing.
Sure. Name is Larry Solomon. I am born and raised in Queens, New York City. Kind of come from a blue-collar type environment and family. Went to New York City public schools, went to Forest Hills High School, and got my degree at one of the State University of New York, the SUNY Albany, State University of New York at Albany. Graduated there in 1986, and I spent my first 30 years working for a company called Accenture, which was formerly called Anderson Consulting. It's a multi-billion-dollar global technology and consulting organization. I was a partner there for the last 10 years or so while I was there. I then retired in 2016, took a few months off, realized that retirement wasn't for me at a young age, and I joined a company called EPAM Systems, which is another publicly traded technology software engineering company with over 50,000 employees. And it's headquartered in Newtown, Pennsylvania, which is where I work every day. And I live now in the southern New Jersey area, right outside of Philadelphia. But I also spend time in New York City as well, where my kids live too. So I'm a longtime collector in the unopened market. And it's, like I said, or like Leighton said, he and I have known each other for at least 25 years. So I probably met him when he was around 40 years old or so. And we've done a lot of things together. We've traded stories, we've traded packs, we've traded dollars, we've traded emotions, we've traded dinners and wines, and have had lots of good times.
Yeah, in fact, we have a dinner coming up in a few weeks.
That's right. I'm looking forward to it.
So, Larry, where I want to go next, since you brought up the unopened, is how long have you collected for? But more specifically, because to me, you're a little bit of a unicorn in that
I've been called worse, by the way.
Yeah, you specifically collect unopened, nothing else.
Correct.
So the question that I want you to share your feelings with the audience is, how long have you collected for, but more specifically, why unopened for you?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's an interesting story. I don't know when I started, but I want to say maybe around 20 to 25 years ago. And I only collect, primarily baseball, football, primarily, and a little bit of hockey and a little bit of basketball, but only unopened, and generally nothing from the 80s. I kind of start in the mid to late 70s and go backwards. So that's kind of my sweet spot. Another interesting fact is I've never in my life opened up a pack. I have never opened a pack. I've had one or two where it's opened up on me, the wax is dried up or something like that. But I've never opened a pack. I don't own a single card today, and I never have owned.
Fascinating. So, Larry, think about how long I've known you, and I knew a number of things you just shared. I'm going to change that at our next dinner in a few weeks. I'm going to bring a pack we're going to open, even if it's cheap, so I can at least, say that you're no longer part of the club.
Absolutely. I look forward to that. Good.
Excellent.
So, so I collected for, I don't know, maybe around 10 or 12 or 15 years. And then something happened, and I was getting frustrated with all the fraud that was going on in the industry. And I sold my entire collection. I spoke to a couple of auction houses. You may remember this, Leighton.
Oh, I remember it well, Larry.
It was probably around, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know how long ago, but I remember wanting to get it. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I auctioned it off. If it's important that I say which auction house.
No, it's up to you. If you want to, go right ahead.
I can say it was overall a positive experience. And I got the bug again around, I want to say 5 years ago or so. And I got back into it, and it's been a lot of fun. I primarily buy. I don't sell too much. I don't really trade because I just don't have the opportunity to trade. But I primarily buy from the major auction houses, and I look on eBay, but it's difficult to buy unopened on eBay unless it's authenticated. And I think it's a lot of fun. I look to Leighton for advice, and he usually tunes me in on what's going on in the market and lets me know what's going on at the shows, because I'm not a big show guy, and I keep a pretty low profile. I'm not really part of these chat rooms, although I look at what's going on
Yeah, no, listen,
occasionally.
for someone who's not in it regularly, you do a good job of keeping up with it.
Yeah.
And I would say, Larry, and I know you know this, that when I go to the National, I love it and I never have enough time. But you and I always find a way to connect on the phone, via text or on the phone for at least a few minutes every National. And even though I think this past National, we didn't secure you anything because pricing was out of control.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's been some Nationals where we were able to secure you a couple items for your collection.
Yes. Leighton walks around the National, he takes a
lot
few
of fun.
pictures, he sends them to me. I get excited about some of the items there, and then he tells me the prices, and they're usually about 4x what I'm willing to pay. And
well, we have a plan though. You said maybe not going to sell anything, but you're going to at least give me a few items for next year for the National, and we're going to put them out for sale.
Yes, I committed to that. Maybe more than a few. Who knows?
Excellent. Well,
maybe
we'll
I'll
have
get
video proof that you've committed.
Sell everything. I don't know.
So you just alluded to this a minute ago, but before we get into it, I want to try to press just a little bit on this, because for someone that doesn't open packs, doesn't collect autographs, doesn't even collect individual cards, what is it about Unopened that is like that draws you in, that's so mysterious to you? Or to be fair, what makes you collect it? What do you think is that driving force, or a couple of the driving forces?
I think you just mentioned it in your question. I think part of it is the mystery. Part of it is the unknown. And I will have to admit, since at one point I thought someday I might have a son and I'll have somebody to pass along the collection to.
Well, Larry, I'm up for adoption. I mean, my parents still love me, but I can have two sets of parents.
All right, well, we can negotiate some, although I don't want to negotiate with you because I always come out on the losing end of that. But
I don't believe that. Okay.
I don't have a son, so at this point, I consider myself a collector and an investor. But at some point, I will probably liquidate either a substantial part or all of my collection. But there's something about the unknown and the mystery and trying to figure all that out. And I would also say I love the fact that the supply of Unopened slowly and steadily goes down. And if the market remains stable, that should theoretically increase the value. It's not like a new product, right, where they're just being mass produced now and there's more and more coming to the market. I'm sure that there are other finds out there waiting to be found, and that could have an impact.
We're hoping.
Yeah, you're hoping you get your hands on one of those. Yeah, I just like the mystery. I like the unknown. I like taking myself back to history. I remember specifically as a kid growing up in the Rego Park, Forest Hills area of Queens. There was a candy store that I used to run to at least once a week. And I can specifically recall it was the 1975, which is what I remember, the 1975 rack packs, just, like hanging there on the rack. And I even remember sometimes the owner of the store would be opening up a complete box of them and hanging them, on the rack there. And I'd be the first one to take a look at them, and pick off all the ones that had stars showing. And then I would stick them in my back pocket, take them to school, and I'd flip them against the wall, like really hard, where the corners would become nice and bent,
Sure.
Boy, had I known what I know now.
You might have retired a little earlier, Larry, if you had known.
I wouldn't still be working here now at the age of 40.
Well, just to be clear, because Larry's being a little modest, Larry can retire whenever he likes. And we've joked that Larry will join us here at Just Collect or Vintage Breaks one day. But all the joking aside, Larry, I believe that you are not only excellent at your job, but you're a very well-rounded person. I mean, I can present you with a myriad of questions or issues in my life, and you're really adept at talking about any of them. So I thought this would be a really great question to ask you, because I respect your intelligence level a lot. As far as the hobby and what you see, is there an opportunity that you see in the hobby from someone like yourself who's not in it every day, right? But certainly has the means to buy a lot of great stuff, because some of the items you're talking about are kind of expensive. Is there something that you feel comfortable about, that you're not starting your own business or advising anyone else to start a business? Do you see an area of opportunity in the hobby that you think you would like to see explored?
I do. And since I'm in the technology field, it's going to have a technology bend to my response. I think, and this is a hot area, and anybody that's in business, anybody that is in technology understands the impact of artificial intelligence and data science, data analytics. And I think the use of data today is under leveraged and underexploited in the hobby, whether it's on the buy side, on the sell side, on the dealer side. And there's a lot of data out there already, but I don't think it's been fully leveraged on both sides, buyer, seller. And I think somebody that can figure that out. So let me give you an example that I was thinking about the other day, a short example. So I have a relatively sizable unopened collection. And if the day were to come that I want to sell it, I would like to have data at my fingertips that can tell me where's the best place to go for this type of product to sell, who gets the best price. If I have a 1977 Topps baseball cello box, I'd like to know, does REA get the best prices for those historically? Does Heritage? Does Mile High? Et cetera, rather than having to go look up on my own, which would take me forever, and do searches. And that's just a very basic use of data. But maybe this company does the best job with this product. Maybe that company does the best job with that product. Maybe Leighton does the best job with football unopened. I don't know. So that's
Larry, I think it's a great question. It's a great point. And what I love about our hobby is we're still in the middle of innovating. So in other words, when I graduated school all those years ago, 2000 from Rutgers College, Larry, how long we've known each other, the industry's come a long way.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more money at a corporate level than there ever was. But even as I sit here and I talk to someone who's an avid unopened collector, not only are you dead on accurate about what you just said in terms of the data being that it's out there in volume, but yet it's underserving the marketplace. I mean, Larry, there's places like Vintage Card Prices and Card Ladder, and at best, there's very minimal data on unopened. I mean, There might be some little nuggets here and there now versus 5 or 8 or 10 years ago, but there is not a single unopened database that I know is the go-to. And think about how long we've been doing business for together.
Right.
And yet I do believe in the future there will be. I think you're right. I think that there's going to be, to be clear, I believe it's going to be a company that is in the data space that maybe has a collector or two that's higher level in the company, like yourself, who says, you know what, I can't believe I'm collecting rare wines or I'm collecting rare unopened products of baseball cards, and there's no database or there's no such and such. That's what's going to happen in the future. Is the future a year from now, 10 years from now? Who knows?
Right. Completely agree. Another example, and it's not so easy, but in the unopened space, there's no real way right now to understand how much of a product is in circulation unopened of the known product, because you don't know what's sitting in somebody's attic anywhere. But you can go to the PSA site and you can see a population report that says that there's 10 1962 baseball cello packs that have been graded. That doesn't mean that there are 10 in circulation. What happens if Leighton has opened up 8 of them and now there's only 2? You have no idea. So that population report, while it's interesting and it's useful, it's to some degree irrelevant because you don't know what's left out there.
I'd like to clarify. I think it's an excellent point, but I believe that the pop report is still data. Some data is better than no data. And for whatever it's worth, we believe that we're responsible stewards of vintage unopened. So I would say quarterly, Larry, when we crack packs out of PSA cases, we submit those labels to PSA and they get deducted from the pop report. Now, does every single person who does that or even opens them on a personal level do that? No, I don't think that they do.
Right.
But you bring up a really good point. I just want to caution everyone I wouldn't rely on it as the end all be all, but it absolutely makes a wonderful guide.
Absolutely.
Because some
Absolutely.
information is better than no information. And I just wanted to make sure we clarified that, because vintage unopened packs are wonderful. They can make great investments. Sometimes, though, they can just go up and down like any other asset. We want people to be careful. And that's the whole reason why I wanted to bring you on, Larry, because I wanted to share some of your expertise in the space.
Yep.
I'm curious, because I'm going to have Steve Hart hopefully on in the future, and Steve doesn't grant a lot of interviews either. I think I heard there's some rumblings about this, but I'm curious, Larry, if you have you heard anything out of the Steve Hart BBC Exchange camp? By the way, for those that don't know who that is, check him out at bbcexchange.com. He is the world leader in terms of vintage authentication. And of course, he has an incredible inventory as well. But Larry, it would be great if Steve said, I've authenticated 37 boxes of 77 Topps baseball since we've been authenticating. We don't know if they're still around.
Yep.
But even the fact that he authenticated them, I would love to know. And so I'm curious, have you heard anything about that, like out of that camp in terms of?
No, I have not. But I agree. Actually, it's a double-edged sword. I agree that would be extremely useful information to know. It'd be great to know what's been authenticated, what's been opened, what's remaining out there, what's been sold, where it's been sold. There's a whole bunch of that data. On the flip side of that, if you go back to one of the points I made before about the mystery and about the unknown, to some degree, if I knew exactly how many packs have been graded and how many were out there, and if I had an X-ray scan of every attic in the U.S. and I could see what's sitting up there, then it would take a little bit of the fun out of it. But no, I have not heard anything, but I agree with you 100% that it would be useful. And, what exists today is extremely helpful. Just coming back to your point, the PSA Pop report, especially for the older stuff, you can get a very good direction. If I'm interested in buying a 1958 football cello, which is a tough pack to get in high grade, I'd at least like to know how many have been graded. And I can make some assumptions that maybe all of them are still around, or maybe just a few of them have been opened, but not that many people are just, in a mass market way, opening up 1958 football cello packs.
Agreed. And one other point that I wanted to bring up to the audience who might just be listening to this, but really enjoying the conversation, about Unopened, is if you're looking for data, some of the bigger auction houses like Heritage, so you can find them at ha.com, or Robert Edward Auctions, they have a function, which I'm sure you've utilized, Larry, where you can actually search all of their completed auctions. So sometimes it doesn't work exactly the way you want, but if you take something like, Larry, what you're suggesting, a not easy to find 1967 Topps Second Series rack pack, because Heritage had to find it those years ago, you can see in their completed auctions, they've sold 9 of them. This is what they've sold for. And I happen to like Heritage's software and their website a lot, because if you happen to be a collector like Larry, or a nutso like myself who sees something, sometimes you can make an offer for that item that sold 6 years ago through Heritage's system. Yes. It doesn't mean that the consignor, or the buyer of that item is going to sell it to you or even get back to your offer. But I just wanted to point out that I believe that's good data also. And I think that through conversations like this, Larry, I'm hoping that whether it be Nat Turner from PSA or others like Steve Hart, they hear someone like yourself who's got an extensive, valuable, unopened collection, that if there was just a little bit more transparency, just a little bit more data, you might go hog wild, or you might tell 6 buddies at work about your hobby interest. And now all of a sudden they're like, wow, well, you know what? I really love it because it's super cool the way Larry described, and I can find out what it's worth. I have a great way to figure out if it's real, all that good stuff. I just believe in general, and I know you believe this too, Larry, you want education in whatever space you're in. At work, yep, meaning for yourself, you want it in your hobbies. Listen, I'm a tennis player. I take multiple lessons a week. Education. You have to get educated in order to understand the space or niche that you're in.
You're exactly right. And those archive sites that you just referenced, I am looking at constantly before I make a purchase. And I will tell you that the the technology that Heritage has is far superior in terms of the archiving and looking up. You can sort by date, you can sort by price, you can sort. It's far superior than the other large auction houses.
I would agree. So Larry, I could keep you forever, so I'm going to try to boil it down to 2 more questions. I'm going to ask you to show off a couple packs if you did bring some with you. So the first thing is, as you know, my son Crosby is 9 years old, and I was thinking about him a lot recently for a number of reasons. And so I'm curious, what advice, now my son might be a little bit young for this question, but let's just say someone who's a teenager or in their 20s and they're starting to have a few dollars in their pocket. What advice could you give to a young unopened collector who's just starting out, but heard today's podcast and is like, holy smokes, I can buy a 1975 Topps rack pack that's unopened? I didn't even know that. What's maybe 1 or 2 pieces of advice you could offer folks?
At that age, I would say the first priority is to do something that you have some fun with, because you're not going to make a killing with any of this stuff at age 9 or age 10 or age 11. By the way, just reflecting back on something you said about your son, at a very young age, I also taught my girls the importance of a firm handshake. So we have yet something else in common. That's
another toast to be done over dinner
when you meet someone, and not only firm, but look in the eye, and
Oh my God, Larry, you're melting my heart. I'm getting goosebumps. I'm so impressed with my son.
The dead fish handshake is just a non-starter with me. I shake a lot of hands, trust me.
I know you do.
If it's a dead fish, they might as well just walk out of the office before they.
We say no to the dead fish handshake here at Just Collect.
Absolutely, yes. But I think at a young age, I mean, sports is just it's a great industry. It's a great thing to follow. It's a great thing to get involved with physically, mentally. And I think, collecting something is also very exciting because it does give you skills around organization and analytical skills, and you get to meet people and network and, spend time with your parents, going to shows and looking at stuff on the internet. At that age, I would say, do it if you're having fun with it, if you enjoy it. And then as you start to, get a little older and make a little money, then you can start focusing on the investment component or the value component of it, which is, more where I am now. But even where I am now, I actually enjoy it. I enjoy.
Oh, I know you do.
Oh,
I know on
absolutely.
a real crap day at work, Larry, for you, if I call you, I could tell you're thrilled I called.
Absolutely. There are some days when I'm waiting for the call, and you're going to tell me about some find of unopened packs. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Well, the last piece, or the last question I'm going to ask you is I know that you're very successful financially, but I believe you're a very well-rounded person and you're very sound-minded. And we've been through a lot together, ups and downs. And so what can you impart? I don't care if it's young or old, meaning the collector. I want you to try to think about it and give a piece of advice that could help the folks who are listening to this, who are collectors, increase their budget for collecting. So it could be something to do with the hobby, or it could be, I still cut coupons, or whatever the case is. What do you think? There's 1 or 2 pieces of advice that we can offer out there to folks to maybe put a little bit more money into their hobby budget?
I think you have to be very intentional and prescriptive if you're going to want to do something like that. And what I mean by that is you're going to have to make that a priority. And before you spend or set aside funds for other things that are to be considered discretionary. So I wouldn't consider putting money into a 401k as discretionary, even though it is discretionary. But to me, especially at a younger age, that's a higher priority than saving for a 1975 rack pack. But once you've gotten to the point where your bills are paid and your retirement objectives are dealt with each week or each month, then you have lots of options, right? You can spend money on clothes, you can spend money on concerts, you can spend money on vacations, on food, on a fancy car. If you want to increase your budget for something that is truly discretionary, but of significant interest to you, I think you have to be very intentional and prescriptive around putting money aside to increase the budget so that you can do something more substantial in the hobby that excites you at some point in the future. Because without that, you're going to see, if you're like most of us, right, and we don't have that much extra lying around, you're just going to see the money being used up in other areas, and it's going to disappear by the time you look at your budget and try to increase it.
Well said, Larry. Be intentional. And what I would add to it is, and I know Larry for a long time, and I've seen him do this firsthand, Larry doesn't collect, and correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, but you're not collecting for money. You collect because you enjoy it. And I know your items are worth money, so you're no fool. But as far as, this whole notion of increasing your budget, what happens is in life, right? So I'm passionate about tennis. So not only have I gotten better, but I actually know a lot more about the sport. I'm knowledgeable about the space. So what happens, I believe, Larry, as you potentially become a little bit more specific with your goals and intentional, you then start to learn about that little niche. So the hobby already itself is niche, but Unopened is super niche. But then I think what happens is you can take that knowledge and maybe instead of buying that next item for your collection, you might say, you know what, I'm going to buy a collection of items and I'm going to take 2 of them for myself and I'm going to sell off 3 of them because I know the space. And even though I'm not going to make $1 million, I'm going to reduce the cost of my other 2 items by $300 each. And I'm ecstatic with that. I've seen you do that. I've done that myself. And I wanted to share that with others. That's still making money, but you're really reducing the amount of money you would need, or to increase the amount of savings that you would need. You're actually going to contribute to that as well, just in a different way.
Spot on. Agree 100%. And as you rightfully point out, there were a few times when I saw a single lot of unopened packs. Maybe there were 10 and I wanted 3 of them, but I bought the whole lot.
I took 3 of them and, whatever.
And I kept the 3 that I wanted.
Yeah. So Larry, with really no time left here, as I'm sure you have to get back to it, did you have a chance to grab a couple packs to show off in your collection?
I actually did. I grabbed two packs here, one football and one baseball. I'll show them to you quickly here. So
sure.
The first one is, I hope you can see this, I can see it. 1962 baseball cello. It's graded near mint 7. And it's in one of the older PSA holders. The newer ones are a little longer and flatter and
harder to crack out. That's for sure.
Yeah. Although all these things are bricks, I don't know how anyone can even get a pack out of here, which I guess is a good thing. But this is an interesting one for a couple of reasons. Number one, 62 sellers are not that abundant. As a matter of fact, prior to a year or 2 ago, there were practically none to be found, and then about a small handful hit the market at one time. There were about 8 or 10 packs, maybe a dozen that came to market, and I bought a few of them. This one happens to have Roger Maris, which I think you can see on top.
Oh yeah.
And then on the back, it's got Nellie Fox. And neither
has a stamp
one
insert as well, which is super cool.
It has a stamp insert, and I'm sure everybody knows Steve Bilko. That's a household name. No offense to any Steve Bilko fans. And Roy Sievers from the Philadelphia Phillies, who are in first place right now. So I thought this was an interesting one, not only because it's a 62, but because it's got you could argue a semi-star on the front and a name on the back. So
Hall of Famer Nellie Fox and Roger Maris, a lot of people think should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting one.
That's great.
The other one that I grabbed, I already mentioned, but in my comments, it's what I consider very rare.
Love that pack.
1958 football cello pack. I tend to go for the cellos more often than the wax in my collection. And this one is graded near mint 8 out of a 10 scale. It's also in one of the older PSA holders. This one I like because if you look at the last name, it's Larry. And I mean, why not? Like, if I'm going to go on a show like this and I can find a pack with my name on it, why not? Why not
No,
show it to
listen,
everyone? So,
that's great. I didn't even think about that, Larry.
yeah,
Only because you brought it up, and I think it's an interesting point. Why do you prefer cello packs versus wax packs?
yeah. And I think I'm in the minority because I think the hardcore collectors prefer wax.
Because of the
I
art.
like the cellos because I think you get a better bang for your buck. In wax packs there's only 4, 5, 6 cards, usually 5, and in cellos is more like 10, sometimes 12, and even in the later years, like starting in 1970, 71, 72, 73, there were 20, 24, 27, 28 cards. So I think just in terms of if you're looking to open packs, which I'm not really, but someone out there is, you just get a bigger bang for your buck. The other thing is, I think cellos are more difficult to counterfeit than wax, and there's a lot of fraud and counterfeiting going on in the unopened industry. Frankly, it's true of anything with value, whether it's a baseball pack, or a watch, or a purse, or a piece of art, or whatever it is. There's a lot of fraud, but I think the thieves have gotten a lot more creative with how they're counterfeiting all of the packs: rack packs, cello packs, wax. I think wax tends to be the easiest, and I think cellos, at least I can tell, even when they're in the holder, it's not a guarantee that they're authentic. Everybody makes a few mistakes, but I just prefer the legitimacy of cellos more so than wax. But I do recognize a lot of the hardcore unopened collectors really, really like wax, and it's got all the wrappers are different colors and different styles, and
it's different art.
Yeah, different art. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun.
That's great. Well, listen, I probably come from the same camp as you do as far as cellos, because I've just always been a dollars and cents guy, and I understand that they're tough enough, and especially as I got into breaking years ago. I mean, even before Vintage Breaks, when I opened up a cello pack and I was trying to get nice cards, it was cheaper per card to buy a cello pack than it was a wax pack. And I figured in the wax pack you have gum that ruins at least one card, and the cello pack you have no gum for most of the cellos,
right?
So it doesn't ruin any cards,
right?
Larry, thank you so much for joining me today. I had a blast chatting with you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Hello to everybody out there that's listening to this. And once again, Leighton, I'm delighted and honored, and keep up the great work. It's a pleasure working with you and doing business with you and calling you a friend and a colleague. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Same here, Larry. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
Take care. All right, folks. That is our guest for today, Larry Solomon. I hope you enjoyed today's content. If you did, let me know by smashing the like button, leaving us a comment. Look for more guests in the upcoming weeks. Until next week, this is the Doctor signing off. Thanks so much for tuning in.